This afternoon's commencement speaker is Jim Lehrer, award-winning television journalist and anchor of the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer. Mr. Lehrer grew up in Kansas, earned a degree in journalism from the University of Missouri, served in the Marine Corps, and then in 1959 began his career as a reporter for the Dallas Morning News. By 1968, he was city editor of the Dallas Times-Herald. His next move was to public television, first in Dallas and then in Washington, D.C., where he became public affairs coordinator for PBS and a fellow at the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. His partnership with Robert McNeil began in 1973 when the two teamed up to provide continuous live coverage of the Senate Watergate hearings on PBS. In October 1975, the Robert McNeil Report premiered on WNET in New York with Jim Lehrer as Washington correspondent. Renamed in 1976, the McNeil-Lehrer Report subsequently won more than 30 awards for journalistic excellence, and in 1983 became the McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour. Mr. Lehrer has been sole anchor and executive editor for the last 2 years. The program's hallmark remains its in-depth coverage of important news stories. In the last 3 presidential elections, Mr. Lehrer moderated 6 of the nationally televised debates. His work has won him several Emmys and numerous other awards, including election to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. He is also a novelist and playwright. His next novel, Purple Dots, will be published this fall by Random House. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Jim Lehrer.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here today and to play a very small part in a very large event. Seattle and the state of Washington have been special places to me for a very long time, even though I only came here the first time a very short time ago, just a few years ago. But I had known Seattle, and I had spoken of it favorably out loud on many occasions before, because in addition to going to the University of Missouri, before that I went to a little junior college in South Texas in the 1950s, and I worked at night as a ticket agent in the Trailways bus depot. And one of my duties was to call the buses on the PA system to places like Seattle. Allow me to demonstrate. May I have your attention, please? This is your first call for Continental Trailways, 8:10 a.m., Silverside's air-conditioned through liner to Houston. Now leaving from lane 1 for Inez, Edna, Ganedo, Louise, El Campo, Pierce, Wharton, Hungerford, Kennelton, Beasley, Rosenberg, Richmond, Sugar Land, Stafford, Missouri City, and Houston. Connecting in Houston for Huntsville, Buffalo, Corsicana, Dallas, Fort Worth, Wichita Falls, Amarillo, Tucumcari, Albuquerque, Flagstaff, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Portland, and Seattle. All aboard. Don't forget your baggage, please. Now I ask you, are there many commencement speakers who can do that? No, no, no. And you may say, thank the good Lord for that. Speaking of commencement speakers, I've been to many graduations. Hundreds, thousands, millions it seems like. As a graduate, as an undergraduate, as a parent, as an uncle, as a neighbor, as a friend, as a reporter. And I'll tell you with all honesty, I can't remember one word that any other commencement speaker said. I can't even remember what any of them looked like. So relax. I will not keep you long. Feel free to let your mind wander. I'm well aware of the fact that you all have come here to graduate, and the rest of you have come here to watch them and to relish in that event. To help you in your mind wandering, let me tell you, I divided this into 2 very neat categories. The first is a quiet viewing with alarm for all of you, a sermon of sorts. And then the second part is a little advice for just the graduates of the class of 1998. First, the sermon. It's about journalism. about the way I make my living and have been for nearly 40 years. And I have been wondering why it has fallen so far and so hard in the public esteem polls. In fact, it's so bad now that we're down there with the Congress and the lawyers and the child pornographers. No offense to any one of the three groups who may be present. And I've been wondering what happened to my once noble craft, why it has become something akin to professional wrestling, something to watch rather than to believe. Could it be the new savagery that has become part and parcel of what some people would call the new journalism, marked by predatory stakeouts, brutally coarse invasions of privacy, talk show shouting and violence, no source reporting, and other cute and popular techniques? Could it be the blurring of the old lines between straight news, analysis, and opinion? The fact that it is no longer unheard of to read a story on the front page of a mainline newspaper, the President of the United States, in order to show that he's not a jerk after all, announced a new policy on Mexico or whatever. Or to see a television news correspondent introduce a news event and then say right after the event is over, well, the president or the senator or the mayor or the governor or whatever certainly failed at that, whatever that was. In the old days, the obvious attempt to show that he's not a jerk after all, or the sure failed at that, would have been on the editorial page, or in the words of somebody clearly labeled a commentator or an analyst. In the old days, the reporters reported, the analyzers analyzed, and the pundits pundited. And they were all different people. Nobody did all three at the same time. Could another cause be something what I call the new arrogance? The fact that some in my line of work have developed an approach in their words and sneers and body language that says loud and clear, only the journalists of America are pure enough to judge all others. And judge we must, because God really did die in the 1960s. And the journalists of America must take up the slack, because there are no others out there who can do that, because there are no others out there who are pure enough to do so. Could it be our new problem with entertainment? Garrison Keillor spoke of it to a big dinner of radio, TV journalists and semi-journalists in Washington a few years ago. He warned about the danger of trying to be fascinating rather than just informing. Quote, when you slip into the field of entertainment, then you will be expected to be fascinating. This is going to shorten your careers. Nobody can be fascinating for long, but people can be accurate and be responsible for an entire career, end quote. Could it be that trying to be fascinating has resulted in some confusing personnel moves? As Jim Squires, the former editor of the Chicago Tribune, wrote recently, news events spawn new celebrities who show up at a later event with a microphone pretending to practice the craft of journalism. Actors, comedians, politicians, lawyers, infamous criminals, and some who fit all five categories now regularly masquerade as reporters on newscasts and talk shows. Watergate burglar G. Gordon Liddy and Clinton White House political advisor George Stephanopoulos are both widely considered to be journalists. Former Nixon speechwriter Pat Buchanan and civil rights activist Jesse Jackson go from being story subject one month to storyteller the next. Lawyer Johnny Cochran may be on television standing beside a famous defendant one day and on another interviewing the same defendant from behind an anchor desk. Worse, many of the people signing the paychecks of these pretenders and making the programming decisions can't see any difference between real news and celebrity news programming. They think that having been celebrated in one news event qualifies someone to cover another. It never